That's right, everyone. I have managed to find the upload button yet again. How incredible. And today is nothing more than another stepping stone in my path. I bring you more anatomy. In this video, I will take you through my process drawing 200 poses in a week, and I will be going over how I organized and time managed myself, all the struggles and non-struggles that I went through, and at the end of the video, I will talk a little bit about what I gained from the challenge, as well as, of course, was it worth it? Hello everyone, I'm Rina. I'm currently on the journey of learning art, and I've been documenting it right here on YouTube. Welcome, my beautiful baninas, and strap in because I already know that this will be a long one. If I happen to sound a little bit more nasal than usual, it's because I'm coming out of a really bad cold that had me fighting for my life, so apologies if my voice sounds a little different. Recently, I had found myself thinking a lot about what kind of different things I could do to improve my anatomy skills, as I had really started to feel like I could do better if I just put in more work. Going into this challenge, I would say that I'm sort of like a beginner intermediate level. I honestly have no clue because sometimes I'm good, sometimes I'm absolute garbage. I guess it depends on the day, but at the time of recording the video, I had been studying anatomy for 9 months on and off, and today I just bring you the baby. The goals I had written going into this were very straightforward. I wanted to be able to sketch poses faster and more easily, and for that, I needed to better my understanding of proportions, especially like proportions. And as for other goals that I had, that was it. That was the only goal. I'm glad you're all caught up now. I started by preemptively gathering all my references so that I wasn't wasting time scrolling for the next one in between drawings. I looked up simple pose reference on Pinterest and dragged the ones that matched what I had in mind into pure ref. This was a bit tedious, especially making sure that the poses were all within the same difficulty level, but I made the first 100 poses very simple with very little dynamics and the other 100 more of a mix. The reason why I chose extremely simple poses for this challenge is because you gotta start somewhere, and I am honestly really bad at just drawing a standing still figure, so I guess that's also part of my goals. But after gathering all the references, I had to decide on what kind of time management I was gonna use because doing this in a week means that I can't take more than just a few minutes per pose. The obvious solution is to get a timer and set it to like 3 minutes, but the idea of it alone stressed me out because I really don't like seeing a countdown. So I decided to simply use the length of a song as a time management tool, meaning the song ends, time's up. And with that, you are all caught up and we can get into the real content of the video. The whole challenge was nearly doomed to fail the moment that I opened Clip Studio Paint and picked a textured brush to start drawing with, as it is evident by these two monstrosities that I drew first. But thank the heavens that I quickly came to my senses and realized that this looked god-awful. Or at the very least, far more awful than what it needed to. After the second pose, I switched to a proper brush, the round mixing brush that I was really bad at using at first, but it'll just become another thing to improve on along the way. Going into this challenge, I was very intimidated, so I decided to do what I found most logical in the beginning. Before starting the pose, I went over to the original, examined the main guidelines I could take away, and tried, emphasis on tried, to keep those lines in mind. Once the song ended, or I considered my pose finished, I brought in the reference and analyzed where I went wrong. In these moments, I focused on what really went over my head, what details I wasn't paying enough attention to, and also tried to think of connections between shapes, just any kind of trick that I could implement to help me in the next pose, and then rinse, repeat. This was something that I did every single time up until pose 20-ish, and then I started only bringing the reference more occasionally until I just didn't anymore. When bringing the reference in, I usually picked the shoulders or chest as a reference point between my drawing and the picture because that was usually the part that I got the most accurate. As at this point, I am not so bad at the upper half of the body. I have drawn quite a lot of torsos, so they are a lot more accurate than the lower body. The one thing that you will constantly see throughout these early time lapses is that I wasn't lying. I really needed to better my understanding of leg proportions. At one point, I decided to start marking the poses that I liked with a star, that way I could look back and see if I had been delusional with my ratings. I believe I kept this to poses that I did myself and didn't completely adjust, or At least I really hope I did that. And this was a really good idea on my part. It's really interesting to see how my standards for which poses I give a star kind of go up over time. Speaking of good poses that I was proud of, here's the worst thing that I ever drew. Meet my long-term enemy throughout this whole thing, walking poses. These will repeatedly come up in the very near future, and while I am now glad that I included them, back then I wanted to. This is so horrendous. If you want some foreshadowing, it took a long time for me to draw one walking pose that I didn't hate with my full soul and body. All that, and on day 1, I drew from 9 p.m. to almost 3 a.m. But for a total of 3 hours and 34 minutes because I take quite a lot of breaks, not to just clear my mind but rest my hand. In that time, I drew a total of 41 poses, and I can't tell you how accurate I really was with the song timer. I might have taken a song length, sometimes a few seconds over, but then it took me half of another song to study all the adjustments that I had made. So when you put it like that, I guess it always took me longer to complete a pose. I started day 2 by cutting my losses. Instead of struggling right from the beginning with proportions, I just broke down a reference. It was also double tasking by using this as a warm-up because the creature feature was up next. I don't know what I was thinking with these walking poses. I mean, I don't understand legs when they're just standing still, but suddenly I understand foreshortening in 3 to 4 minutes. I really did think when I saw these on Pinterest that walking would be easy to mimic. Well, let me tell you, it wasn't easy. Spoiler, I don't even know why she's so wiggly. I don't know why I did that to her. As I watch this back, knowing the future, I also want to mention just how bad my lines are. It is rough watching this back at times. And it is not to say that I have perfect lines later on, but they are certainly a whole lot better. Here in the beginning, I might start off well, and then I overwork it so much that it becomes a real blobby mess. And I can only attribute that to how insecure I was being. I was very unsure, and as I warn you here, be purposeful with your lines. Anyone can tell that these are not the sketches of a person who really thought about what kind of lines she was making. It might be like, however, like kind of like sort of like a little bit worth mentioning that I was still learning how to use the brush because like it's like really new to me and I was just like not comfortable with it, but like that is like totally not an excuse. I don't actually have much else to say about day 2. I was kind of tired. There was just something about staying up past 3 a.m. Or maybe I just really burned myself out right away with all the walking. But that aside, on day 2, I drew a total of 15 poses in the span of 1 hour and 26 minutes. And that is obviously very loyal to the song timer. Don't do the math. Look at these delusions after all those walking poses that I think that this is good. It's not.
Every day I wake up!
Day 3 overall is marked by more confidence. Rough start, but it always takes me a while to warm up. However, upon breaking into the 60s, I was gaining this wave of confidence since I was noticeably decreasing the time that a basic pose took me, but in addition, I could also feel that my understanding of proportions was bettering itself. I could feel it slowly happening in my fingertips. Every time that I finished a pose before a song ended, I was basically unstoppable. I was ready to teach Da Vinci a lesson or two. These ones that you're seeing right now, if they have hair, that means I had time to spare. I had time to kill. Over and above that, it was after pose 61, which at the time, I hadn't even noticed that this happened, but did I ever notice anything happening throughout this whole challenge? No. It was here that I stopped feeling the need to bring in the reference to correct my mistakes. I just let the poses exist as they were. It was also on this day that I believe I found my peak out of the first 100 poses. Pose 81 has got to be my favorite out of the first 100, and you could argue, but like it isn't even accurate to the reference. And I say that couldn't matter less, like since when is that important? It's just, I think that it's just like a really cute and fun pose. And like she even has hair. Let me have my moment. I think she's cute. From poses 85 to 89, I can start to see myself doing things a bit in what is soon to become more me, more my quote-unquote style, as these ones really feel like the early prototypes of what is going to develop in the next set of 100 poses. It was after these where I took a step back and I realized, whoa, am I like getting the hang of this thing? Like, I don't even know where legs started coming along more easily. It just sneaked up on me before I could realize, but I had begun understanding the subtle curves, and that was previously one of the main issues. My legs were weird and stiff because I did not understand anything about all these curves that actually form a leg. I would attempt to recreate them, but because I didn't understand them, it always looked off and strange. And this is super funny, let me tell you, because through the time lapse alone, you can't always tell the emotional anguish that I was going through at times. However, thanks to the ancient records found in my tomb, my Notion files, we are allowed a sneak peek into the past. As I went along, I made sure to take notes so that future me doesn't lose her mind trying to put this video together, but at post 24, I wrote, and I quote, "Said times to be me. I might as well be doomed. No way I will actually learn legs. This is an impossible feat. I can't figure out the proportions for the life of me." Mind you, I wrote this in full despair when I was at pose 24 of what was always going to be at least 200 on day one. I had just started. I had just sat down to start this thing. So, a bit dramatic, isn't she? The last 8 poses out of the 100 are more dynamic and fun. I wanted to challenge myself and not be so boring because I did know that I would get a little bored. But with that, I had finally reached 100 poses. And these are far from perfect. Some of them aren't really finished either because sometimes it just didn't work. But that is perfectly okay, obviously. These were the beginning stages, and I am about to keep drawing more, and then even more across my lifetime. There's no plans of stopping. But regardless of that, improvements have been seen. Comparisons between pose 33 and pose 85, or pose 37 and pose 88. I also had a really hard time with pose 57. While I was doing it, I knew that I wasn't just cooked, I was burnt to a crisp. But at pose 100, while it's not exactly the best, I had at least an easier time drawing it, and they are quite similar in nature. As a result of the final push for 100, I drew a total of 42 poses. We are so back in the span of 3 hours and 16 minutes. Don't do the math. Christmas Eve, everyone. Do not let me know how delayed the upload of this video is. I'm aware. But since Christmas Eve, at least for me, usually just means a lot of waiting, I use my free time in between jolly activities to be on the pose grind. And I did give myself the excuse to not think too much about the timer because it was Christmas and I should just take my time and enjoy the process. But I do think that I gave myself an excuse to ignore the timer every day from here on out. So, like I already said, sleazy little liar. On this day, I know that I felt a lot more confident, yet again, but this time with my lines. I was feeling like I had gained control over the brush, therefore my lines also better themselves. It's also more obvious than ever that I had begun drawing bodies in a more constant style, all with similar proportions and overall vibe. You can begin to accuse me of same body syndrome, and that would in fact really hurt me if I cared. Yes, everyone has the same torso and legs and no waist, but who cares? It's my drawings and I can do that. But there was something that I found funny about my torsos though, because I kept seeing this damn screwdriver from Andy Manny. I saw it everywhere I turned and it cracked me up every single time. And this is also some foreshadowing for later in the video, because I give you a full rendition of what I was seeing every single time. You just need to wait a little bit, it will come. But moving along, I know I finally connected some important dots in what I was previously lacking. The main one I can remember is how long torsos actually are. If I go back to look at my first page of poses, I kept drawing a lot of the initial figures with really short torsos. And I know this could be because of the model personally having a short torso, but I can guarantee you that I wasn't drawing them short because I noticed that the reference had a short torso. It was because I did not know how long an average torso really is. This reason is why I found many of these poses short / stacked looking. I don't know if that sounds rude, but I knew something looked wrong, yet I couldn't figure out what it really was until this day. I believe it was pose 115 where it really clicked. So not to freak out or anything, but this was a really big deal for me. I was finally on the right path to draw avatar proportions. Just what I've always dreamt of doing. I ended the day on these 2 poses that I was really proud of, and I wanted to keep drawing so bad, yet I couldn't. And I was really upset, like, okay, I'm finally making progress and now I have to stop. Very funny, Mr. Santa Claus. On day 4, I drew 22 poses in the span of 2 hours and 43 minutes across the whole day. That is really... So on day 5, I drew a total of 6.5 poses. It was Christmas Day. And at this point, I don't exactly remember why I didn't draw at all. Because all I wrote down was, didn't draw much. Like, thanks, I couldn't tell. But I drew for a total of 23 minutes. And that's it. Like, this is all that I have to show you. There's nothing else. I don't know what to say. Cool, let's move on. Day 6, I woke up with a fire under my ass because I had 2 days left. And considering the way that I had behaved just the previous day, it wasn't looking the greatest. On this day, I finally decided to do you, the viewer, a favor. And I remember that you can actually put a little Spotify widget on the screen, and that way you can see that I am the sleazy little liar of the block, but you can also see that sometimes, many times in fact, I take less than a song. Now, this day was bad. The poses from 142 to 147 were really hard to get through. I was getting really bored because I had drawn, well, too many boring poses. How many times can a person draw the same boring stance before going insane? I was very close to knowing, but at the same time, I knew that this was something that I had to do because prior to this, I was having an extremely hard time with these boring stances. So I just had to tough it out, but I also kept thinking in my head, I regressed.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, so I'm known for being overly dramatic, but for some reason I never noticed that I am being overly dramatic in the moment and just think that I'm always doomed. I didn't regress, in case that isn't obvious. I was just having a really hard time getting into it this day. The recordings that I have go from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. Yet I drew for only 3 hours and 23 minutes. I took so many breaks hoping that I would come back with answers, and I never really did. But looking back, it seems like I just completely forgot what initially helped me significantly improve in the beginning. Not only drawing over the references, marking guidelines, but also bringing the image in and checking for mistakes and correcting what I drew. Why did I suddenly forget that I could do that? It's not illegal. The only plausible answer I have as to why is probably because I thought in my head that the way that I was drawing the bodies was just not exactly the same as the references anymore, so it wouldn't help much, which wrong. It would have still worked, but whatever. Like, just because they're missing a waist doesn't mean that you can't compare it to the reference, you dumbass. Overall, I was really scared of secretly being Shane Dawson, you know, coming on here with this video and at the end being like, guys, look, I kinda got better. And then it's a Shane Dawson moment. I lived in fear. To make myself feel better and to prove to myself that I am not secretly Shane Dawson in his beauty guru era, pose 18 and pose 165 are 5 days apart. And the left isn't the worst pose for the person that I was, which was someone with basically very little to no full body experience. On day 1, it probably would have taken me over 20 minutes to draw something like pose 165. But here, I drew it in just a few minutes. So I am not Shane Dawson. Plus, look, I told you that my line work would get better. Look at how confident I am here. Da Vinci is actually waiting for his lesson right now while I finish recording. Day 6 was a journey, a bad journey, but pose 165 is one of my favorites out of the whole thing. So even in your darkest moment, a little light shines through. Da Vinci's gonna love that one. I have nothing else to really say about this day. It just wasn't my day mindset-wise, and because I was so negative, it did end up affecting the poses that I drew. It's fine. You know, it's fine. Let's just move on. It is the last day, my baninas. We made it. Let's go over it. I began by trying to draw without warming up. Did not work. Shocker. I am contrary to what you might think by watching this video, where I just jump in, no warm up, and then complain about my rough starts. Someone who does usually warm up before beginning to draw. This does not represent me, but maybe this way I'm more relatable. Look at me struggling, haha. So funny and relatable. After pose 175, I did begin to pick up my pace, and at this stage in the challenge, it seems like I had finally found a formula that works for me a bit more, a certain order of doing things. I would always start with the head, that always ends up being too small once I draw more of the body. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Then a shoulder line and perhaps a body line to guide the movement, the chest and the sides of the body, also known as the handy-manny screwdriver build, and then hips, legs, and I leave the arms for last because who cares about arms anyway. This might also be the right time to announce that I have completely avoided the topic of feet on purpose. It is something that I struggled with the whole time, but because it's also a part that I don't think I improved in at all, that's why I have remained silent. Don't look at the feet. Feet were really hard to draw, more so because most references had shoes, and I was drawing my figures with their piggies out, and I didn't have proper references for it half the time. So actually, my next video, guys, drawing 1,000 feet angles, and I bet some of you would love that, which concerning. I still had quite a lot of struggles with some angles. Don't even get me started on pose 188. Why? It was just why was that even a reference? There's even like a funny pause when it like shows up on the screen, and it's just like thinking, why am I doing this to myself? There were also times where I just felt like my brain sort of shut down in what was supposed to be really simple poses. Look at the handy manny screwdriver curse. That's what I see every time. I've given you a proper visual this time, like I promised. I still see him. It's like I'm being hunted. You know, I should look up his name. I think it's Felipe, but I'm not sure. Yeah, Felipe. Shout out to him. Post 194. Tell me why I began peeking. Taking matters into my own hands and drawing what I wanted to see. I do fear that this mostly only happened here in these two instances, but wasn't that like kind of cool of me? Like such independence. On the last 5 poses, I started feeling excitement that it was almost over, you know, relief, as well as this anticipated sense of accomplishment, because whoa, I did it. That was kind of crazy. And then all these feelings sort of turned into one big feeling of, oh my god, which resulted in me anxiously drawing through hand pain, as if someone was pointing a gun at me and hurrying me to get it over with. But with my hand about to fall off, I finished, and I was really happy and excited that I managed to do it. I had never done any drawing challenge like this, so that was cool, I guess. Try to feel happy for your accomplishments challenge. Here's a compilation that I made of all the poses that I starred. Look at all these lovely ladies. Some more lovely than others, surely, but what kind of conclusion have I taken away from this challenge? Who would have thought that if you draw something over and over again, you get better at it? This is such an unforeseeable result. I am absolutely flabbergasted. Now, the big question, was it worth it? Yeah, like, I certainly learned things. I can tell you that much, at least. I don't know exactly which things, but things were certainly learned. Okay, I'll be a little bit more serious. Obviously, I improved along the way, and this improvement was simply a whole lot of the same over and over again until muscle memory started doing most of the work for me. I really couldn't tell you the step-by-step process on how I went from starring a broken zigzag leg to actually drawing a walking pose, other than saying that I just drew a lot of the same over and over again, and I completely immersed myself in this for a whole week. My poses nearing the final 200, even the ones that I starred, are far from perfect. I am aware. I still have a long way to go when it comes to perfecting the details, which is exactly what I want to start working on from here on out. This challenge was more about studying proportions and not about drawing the most jaw-dropping figure in 3 to 4 minutes. I still don't know if that is ever my goal. Like I have said, I really am not the fastest drawer, you know. I like to take my time. But for the time being, I am really happy with some of the poses that I have drawn. Perfect or not, they are far better than what I started with, and I know that I will look back at these one day and maybe hate them because I have learned so much more, and then I will see all the flaws, and like, that's fine. It is not the future yet, so I will allow myself to be happy with what I got right now. As for final thoughts, this was really fun and I was able to meet my goals, and I want to keep drawing more poses because I want to reach 1,000. That might be it for this video. I want to thank you if you have watched this far and invite you to spare me a like and perhaps a little tickle of the subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. To anyone that is returning, I want to apologize for disappearing again. I promise you that I do not keep doing it on purpose. Life is testing me. Like, I got sick and then I had to make this video, and then I was busy for a whole week, and then I got really sick, and then I had to finish the video and edit it, so that took a really long time. I apologize. Other things that I can mention: in my previous video I talked about a Discord server, and some people in the comments actually seemed into the idea, so I want to mention that it's been put in the works. It's not finished at all, it's not ready to go, but I will keep working on it. I don't really know what I'm doing. Other people have asked me in the comments of my videos if I have other forms of social media, and the answer is yes, I do. The thing is just that I never really post. I will link my Twitter and my TikTok in the description. I'm really bad at this whole creating an internet persona. That's it. Thank you for watching. Maybe I should mention that the video is only about female anatomy.